Hello everyone, welcome back to Larry's Anything Goes. Hopefully you're having a great day. If you've been watching Larry's Anything Goes programming, you know that we are not only providing great financial intelligence content as much as possible by interviewing other financial professionals, professionals in the travel industry, real estate industry, etc. and so forth, but we provide various services when it comes to specific products that we sell, from anything that you would actually find on Amazon or actually at Walmart, etc. and so forth. And we are actually providing specific products due to today's current crisis and whatnot to ensure that we provide the right services and products that you need at a reasonable price when it comes to medical face masks, when it comes to hand sanitizer, and when it comes to latex gloves and things of that nature, and etc. and so forth, toilet paper, paper towels. But we have what you need. Also, family, don't forget that Larry's Anything Goes is a part of an affiliate marketing network known as Gold Standard Partners, where you have the opportunity to buy cryptocurrency and allow others to invest with you as becoming an affiliate marketing partner. And obviously, if they purchase a package with the program, you're able to make money off their package purchases and make money off of their crypto purchases and things of that nature. If you want to join, please follow the links in the description, and I'll give you a call as soon as you sign up and purchase a package, and we'll go from there. But definitely, it's all about the best way to make money moves is to have currency with one another and to ensure that currency is always being spoken of on all levels, so it benefits everyone and not just one specific person. That's a lot of things that people forget about. So think about joining the program and we'll be able to go from there. But if not, either way, it's always appreciated. And thank you for watching, and hopefully you guys have a great day and continuously make money moves so you don't live broke like a fool. Take care. As you can see, with our various products, we have our financial apparel, as you see, wearing There's Anything Goes t-shirt, financial intelligence is sexy, face masks, latex gloves, things of that nature, to obviously ensure the safety of you and your family all at the same time. We want to ensure that you get the best products and see the actual products that we're actually providing for you, and giving you another view of not only the shirts and the medical masks, but actually another view of actual latex gloves and the actual hand sanitizer. Because one thing we've learned throughout this unfortunate crisis is that we have to take more precautionary measures to ensure not only the safety for ourselves, but for our families. And having a great pair of hand sanitizers, latex gloves, and medical face masks will ensure that safety. And with all that being said, hopefully you guys will check out our online store. We have the various products that you see here. With a couple of clicks, especially if you're paying via PayPal, it makes life that much easier for you to purchase our various products, especially during this unfortunate situation. You see the apparel from Larry's Anything Goes. We have the medical products when it comes to hand sanitizer, latex gloves, medical face masks, things of that nature, and various other products. So please check out Larry's Anything Goes. Support small local businesses. We greatly appreciate it, and hopefully that you have a good day. How goes the family? How goes it? Welcome back to Larry's Anything Goes. Hopefully, you guys have a great and exceptional night. Um, so, I've been reading Hill Harper's book, The Wealth Cure, because the main reason why I started the Larry's Anything Goes channel, not just so I could get, likes and subscriptions, not just so I could, get PayPal and Cash Apps and people buy stuff on my online store or join any affiliate marketing that I'm with, from the GS partners to the, Stash, Acorn, crypto.com, Coinbase, et cetera, and so forth. But I really joined, started making content because, like anybody else, I wanted to talk about things that I'm passionate about, and that's the main things that reason I started doing that. But I don't think I've done enough of talking about things that I'm passionate about from a historical standpoint. Because one thing that I'm very passionate about, I think everybody should be passionate about their race, whether you have an Irish background, you're Hispanic, Italian, if you're Jewish, of any sort of Asian descent or whatnot, Middle Eastern descent, your religion, your faith, whatever have you. I think everybody should be proud of who they are, where they come from, and where they're going and whatnot, because if you don't know where you come from, you don't know where you're going at the same time. And a lot of times it gets lost in translation. And a lot of times, we had it's Asian Pacific Asian Heritage Month this month, and that's cool. And get African American History Month in February. Everybody has their month, and that's cool. But I like to read about our history year round and whatnot. And this, ironically, started reading this chapter, and it's called "I Am George" from the book. Um, the Wealth Cure by Hill Harper. And Hill Harper's doing a lot of great things, especially in the crypto space right now. I utilize this platform. As a matter of fact, let me talk about that real quick. I utilize this platform to buy Bitcoin. It's still fairly new, but it's still awesome all at the same time. So let me bring that up now, because I'm bad with names. So let me go on my phone right now and look. And it's called TBW, the Black Wall Street, and you can utilize it by downloading the app. And hey, it's the first of its kind, black owned crypto wallet, crypto exchange, and all that good stuff. So something to definitely check out. But anyways, the show tonight is actually premiering right now on BET. It's called The Porter, and it's about the black porter during the 19th century and whatnot, and or at least during the earlier part of the 19th century. And before I read the passage from the book, I'm going to talk about the show a little bit, because it's I've been seeing commercials about it for months now. It's basically a BET Plus series. The Porter has an official premiere date, which is today. It's considered a civil rights drama. We'll have all episodes available, as of May 5th and whatnot. And not only it's starring Wooder plays a woman who runs the local brothel in St. Anthony, who is sexy direct and takes great pride in living life on her own terms and whatnot. It's set in the 1920s and inspired by real events. The drama follows two train porters, and I'm just reading this verbatim from BET's website. Two train porters and their friends and family, as a tragedy on the job sets them on a starkly different paths to better lives, and on a direct collision course with each other. And I'm not going to go any further. Obviously, you want to do your own research and whatnot, and check out the Porter on BET, BET Plus, and all the good stuff. But at the end of the day, to me, what's most important is to talk about the tenacity of the porters and what they did, because it's not only were they good service people, but they because to me, I think African Americans were much better with money back in that time frame, because they had less opportunities. So they had to not only survive off of the little money that they made, but they had to be able to get together and purchase any assets that was available to them, i.e., real estate, i.e., a business and whatnot, i.e., even certain stocks and whatnot. Because the one thing people don't realize is that um, because they were service people, and even though you had the crazy amount of racism that was going on during that time frame in the early 1900s, they were around business people, because they were serving the elites of the United States, around the United States and whatnot, being porters. So they would hear conversations This is before the internet. They would hear conversations about things going on in the business world and what's the best stocks to pick and things of that nature. A lot of times, as I said, sitting in a room and shutting up and soaking up game and whatnot is some of the best things that you can do. I don't care what race you are. I don't care what position you're in. Like just sitting back, being in the right room. Like I remember one time I was at a job. This is years ago. And I remember these two gentlemen were talking about Amazon stock. And of course I didn't own any back then like I do now, but they were having an in-depth discussion. But I noticed when they turned around and saw me, they shut up and walked away because they didn't want me to know what they knew and whatnot. And back then I was reading a lot, but I wasn't reading as many financial books as I read now to soak up game and to get good things happening and things of that nature. So that's something to take into consideration. You know what I mean? And that's something that I don't take for granted now. And that's why I don't mind. I'm actually scratching my head thinking, should I go to the Invest Fest with the EWIL University so I can get some game and whatnot? Because where I reside now, nobody's talking about this stuff. Everybody, too many people on the basic stuff, and I'm like I said, I'm over that. But anyways, let me read this passage from Hill Harper's The Wealth Cure book because it's very the first time I even saw the whole big thing about black porters was actually watching the Roots episode. And I remember Ozzie Davis, was rest in peace to him and his wife, great actors. And the whole George thing, everybody was called George as a porter back then and whatnot. Because I'm going to read why. I'm not going to just explain off the top of my head. I'm actually going to read why. So let me get to it and let me stop jaw jacking, as they say down south. All right. So around the end of the 19th century. Railroad travel in America became the most luxurious, and like boats, trains began to have sleeping compartments. A genius businessman and entrepreneur by the name of George Pullman created sleeping cars that could attach themselves to any company's trains. Think dedicated first class cabin on different airlines, but all owned by a single company. These were called Pullman cars, and with each Pullman car came a Pullman porter to attend to the passengers' every single need. Pullman porters had to dress impeccably and speak perfect English. They had to be willing to work for low wages and earn most of their money off of tips from passengers. They had to pay for their own food and perform cleaning duties. They had to help the conductor with his work, though they themselves could never hope to be promoted to be a conductor, a job reserved for white men only during that time frame. See, above all, Pullman porters had to be black. Given the limited job opportunities afforded black men during the time, a Pullman porter became one of the best jobs to which a black man in America could aspire. If you were a Pullman porter, you were doing well. The sons and daughters of Pullman porters were often the first in their family, and this is during the early 1900s, so this is very interesting. First in the family to attend college, usually because the porters themselves would save as much money as possible from their tips and earning towards their children's tutoring and education. Oh, yes, one more thing. All Pullman porters could be referred to by any passenger merely as George, as in the first name of the company's owner, George Pullman, and would have to answer and respond accordingly, just as if their own name had been called. I remember hearing this, and this is Hill Harper saying, I remember hearing a story once from a Pullman porter who said he always hoped to be on the same train when the great comic Jackie Gleason was traveling. He said that Gleason would often tip each porter upward of $100, a huge sum in the 1940s and 50s. That's like basically like $2,000 back then. But more important than that, Gleason would always insist on knowing each porter's actual name and never called him George. The white man's first name, universally given to black men, was in the tradition of slaves having the last name of the slave master forced upon them. The irony and injustice of this was not lost even in those times. Yet the Pullman porters themselves had no problem with perception and respect within their own community. Now, before I read the rest of this, I love that the Pullman porters themselves had no problem with the perception of respect within their own community because they had dignity. It's like when I talk to my elders, especially my mom, she'll tell me, people love to get dressed up back then. That's one thing I miss doing more of. Is I know that's not quote unquote popular now, unless you're going to a funeral or a wedding. But I actually miss, wearing suits more and more so because I like looking classy. My version of classy. It might not be your version, but I like my version of classy because if you live in an era now where it's very cool to not only not be classy, but it's cool to look like you don't take a shower. It's cool to look like your clothes haven't been washed in a couple of months. A lot of people, you see that on social media, and I just be like, I wouldn't touch you with my friends' hands, but that's just me. Like I said, I'm not trying to get too crazy, but yeah, we there was pride and dignity during that time frame because people came from such harsh, poor conditions. People coming into a depression, people coming out of a depression. So these things are, it makes a lot of sense. You know what I mean? But anyways, I digress. They were often its pillars, the porters. They had a special devotion to education and at the same time were among the first builders of African American middle class. First builders of the African American middle class. That says a lot. In addition to a track record of economic independence and civil leadership, the Pullman Porters left a legacy of conviction. These generations of Pullman Porters thrived during the heyday of American train travel. It should come as no surprise that not only was Malcolm X once a Pullman Porter, but so were Gordon Parks and Thurgood Marshall. That is something to remember. Now, I did know that Malcolm X was a porter, Pullman porter, but I did not know that Gordon Parks and Thurgood Marshall were either. And Thurgood Marshall was the first African American Supreme Court justice. Um, so that, and obviously he did a lot of things. Brown versus the Board of Education. So it says a lot. Humble beginnings. The book says, can you imagine Pullman Porter training young Thurgood in the 1930s and 30 years later witnessing him serve on the United States Supreme Court? The Pullman Porters made sacrifices for the betterment of their families, community, and country. That type of effort must be part of my wealth cure as well, because that's the name of the book, The Wealth Cure. So to answer the question, who is George? Me. Hill Harper saying this. Me. I am George. And with that thought, I plugged my BlackBerry into the charger because he was obviously on a train while he was talking about this story, and put my earbuds in and looked out the window and proudly stared at our country's beautiful landscape rushing by, feeling empowered by all of the Georges that had ridden these same railways before me. Beautiful thing. And that's one thing actually wouldn't mind doing is taking, I would want to be in a nice cart, but I wouldn't mind getting on a train and just going across the United States of America and whatnot and just seeing the beautiful landscape. That'd be nice. As you can see, I'm a desert rat. I love this desert background from Arizona, a state I actually wouldn't mind living in because I love the desert. But those men called George believed in dignity, conviction, and the power to elevate the means of their family through financial discipline and education. And that's one thing I love the most about that generation of the 1900s, up to the 1900s to up to the 1970s and 80s, like passing down real estate, businesses, having dignity in your job and whatnot, and the sense of family and community was a real thing. It's a thing that we've kind of lost a lot of in African American community, specifically because we have this. That's why I made that video about flossing and whatnot. See, back then it was normal for, okay, if you African American man, if you have the best job to be a Pullman porter, then it was a normal thing to say, hey, I'm going to recommend my son, or I'm going to recommend my nephew, or I'm going to recommend my brother, cousin, or friend. I'm going to recommend them so that, hey, I have somebody I know, they get a good job, they can help themselves and their families out, and so forth. I remember on the movie Roots, the one young gentleman, he had Ozzie Davis basically played his mentor and whatnot as a Pullman. And when anybody tried to mess with him, because since he was a new Pullman and whatnot, he was like, hey, leave him alone. That young man's working his butt off because he was trying to get back into college, because his dad said he wasn't going to pay for his college education anymore, because his dad didn't think that he should, because since his dad didn't have the opportunities to go to college like his son, and this is a sad thing, he didn't want better for his son. He was like, no, you're going to work the fields like I do and work like a dog until you die and whatnot. You don't need to get no more education and whatnot. So he had, defying his father's orders, he had to leave home and work. Luckily he was able to get a Pullman porter's job. But 9 times out of 10, he knew that no matter how hard he worked and how long he worked for the summer, he wasn't going to be able to return back to school the next semester. But the thing is, he had mentorship, and then when the Pullman porters tried to organize from a union standpoint so they could get better treatment and better wages, Ozzie Davis, the older character, actually ended up getting fired and whatnot. But they still looked out for each other, that sense of togetherness. And the story, because not all quote unquote white people were bad back then. I'm not going to make it seem like, because the beautiful part of the story is one of the this one gentleman, his one of the customers that he was assisting, you know, he noticed that he, unlike some of the other porters, he always had a book in his hand. He's like, "Oh, what are you reading there?" He's like, "Oh, I'm studying to be. I think he wanted to be a botanist, I believe so, or some sort of scientist." He's like, "Oh, really?" He's like, "Yes, that's why I'm a porter, sir, so I could try to pay for school and whatnot." He's like, "Well, you're gonna make enough to be able to go back to school and whatnot?" He said, "Most likely I won't be. I go to this school and such because it was HBCU, because that's what the HBCUs were created for back then, because you couldn't go to white universities back during the early to mid 1900s." Um, so he's like, so luckily he worked his butt off, but he still did not have enough money. And the upside is the white gentleman that he had a conversation with on the train, when he went, he sent a check for him to that school, just so he could finish his education and whatnot. So the upside is he was able to finish school, and the money that he saved up, he only had half of the money in order for him to return back to school. He was able to live off that money and whatnot. And that was a beautiful story. Roots, definitely a great series. If you've never seen it, definitely check it out. It was made back in the 70s, but still reigns true to today. Because if you don't know where you came from, you don't know where you're going, family. But anyways, so the moral of the story is that sense of togetherness. I mean, heck, I can't tell you how many times I've looked out for people to get a better job, if not where I work at least for other places, by looking at the resumes, cover letters, all that good stuff, and having a discussion with them. Um, and I thank the people that have done that for me at the same time, because I look now, and now that I'm 39 years old, and I look at a lot of people that are my age, and I see their financial struggles right now, not just because of the jobs that they work, because of the lack of financial education. Because when it comes to lack of financial education, I'm just going to keep it real. A lot of times, and I'm guilty of this myself, if we don't look for certain things, we don't get certain things. And and nowadays it's so easy, it's not even funny. Like I'm being old school right now, reading an old school book, but 9 times out of 10, I get most of my information by listening to streams. I still, from an old school standpoint, read books, but I will say, I most of the great information in the game I get from is listening to stuff on YouTube. That's just what it is. So in the age of information, in the age of 2022, we'll basically be in 2023 in the next 7 months. You know, in the age of information, ignorance is an excuse at this point. And it's just all about. I mean, hey, I'll laugh and joke, and I can have fun with the best of them and whatnot. But I'm about my business, and I'm about being around people that are about their business. I want to be around people that are about elevating, man. I want to be around people that are about being basic. And I think the older one gets, should want to be that way. That's just should be a normal thing. But I digress. So let me finish reading this off. Okay. So those men called George believed in dignity, conviction, and the power to elevate the means of their family through financial discipline and education. Hill Harper said, "How do we stray so far away from those values? How is it that we have arrived at a place where bragging about conspicuous spending has more clout than physical responsibility?" Man, and there's more, but that part I have to read again, family. How did we stray so far from those values? How is it that we arrived at a place where bragging about conspicuous spending has more clout than physical responsibility? I brag about being able to save money and invest money, and I don't brag about it. I don't even brag about it. I talk about it. I talk about it from a standpoint because I'm like, well, how are you doing it? I hope you're doing it. All right. Because then it's like, okay, let's elevate the conversation. Your new Tesla doesn't mean jack to me if it's sucking you dry financially. Your new brand new house means jack to me if it's sucking you dry financially. And then your new Tesla and your new house means jack to me if you're not teaching me how to get it myself. When you say I don't have it, but you can't give me the 1, 2, 3 step guide of, hey, how I can do it as well. Not asking for a handout, but giving information out is considered a hand up. But a lot of times people don't want to do that because they think that they don't want you to elevate up. A lot of people don't mind being, it's kind of like in high school. A lot of people don't mind being the number one popular person at the table where everybody else is in rags and whatnot. So they can constantly brag and look down upon them. A lot of people need that to stroke their ego, you know. And the only ego I care about is when I look into my apps and you know what I'm talking about and see what the digits are looking like. That's the only ego that matters. All right. And then for me, being able to elevate information or whatnot, that's the ego that matters. Ego that matters. I don't need to floss on anybody. I think that's ridiculous at this point, you know. And if I am flossing, I'm like, hey, this is how you can do it. These are the steps you can take. I did this. This is how. This is how. This is the how to. But a lot of people have that jerk mentality in that aspect to where they don't want to do that. And it is what it is, family. All right. Okay, so let's end this off because this has been, I guess I wanted to talk about this because it's I'm very passionate about this story. So Hill Harper says, riding on that train, I finally remembered George again and realized I am a part of him. I need to be, and I need to be that we all are as Americans, no matter what race, a part of George. When I have children, if I tell them the story of George and they don't believe me because in their world it's impossible to conceive of that, that might be a sign of real progress. But if I fail to tell them the story or fail to remember it myself, then that is my shame. And if my lack of remembering means I forget to tell my children the story and they make mistakes in life, that would be a sad regression from all the hard work and sacrifices that Pullman porters made for all of us. So Harper's The Wealth Cure. Check it out. But I could not agree with that statement more because I'm talking about this because when usually you hear in the news about um, the things that African Americans suffered and thrived for. Majority of the time, it's not from an economic standpoint. It's always from a political standpoint. Look, if you're going to vote, vote. If you're not going to vote, don't vote. I'm not going to have a political discussion with you because I am not in politics, so I don't care. But I will say with all sincerity that if you want to have an economic discussion, we're never going to disagree. You know why? Because if you're the only way we're going to disagree is if the conversation strays away from how the income can rise, how the assets can be accumulated, how the assets are going to rise, how the business is profitable. That's usually the principles of talking about finances and whatnot. So if you're talking about that, you got my undivided attention. The methods might not be the same, but the outcome is always going to be the same in a sense. And that was what matters to me the most. And hearing more and more economic stories from that time period, because there was more black owned businesses, real estate back during the early 1900s, all the way up to 1980s, compared to than there is today. From black owned banks, black owned grocery stores, um, not just black owned barbershops and beauty salons, um, and all that good stuff. But the sense of because they had no choice, and not only because they had no choice, but they felt more comfortable being in those atmospheres, because they knew being outside, the chances of getting lynched, getting raped, getting robbed was very high. Or getting put in jail was very high. And another thing to think about it is because when a lot of people who immigrate to the United States, they have the same thing. You can go to little Central America, Central South America. You can go to any spots, a lot of places in the country where it's little Philippines. It could be little Koreatown, Chinatown, Japanese town. It could be, little Russia. It could be little Ukraine. It could be, Haiti, Jamaica, Puerto Rico, Cuba, Dominican Republic, Mexico, El Salvador, Honduras. The list goes on and on. I've been to a lot of major cities in the United States of America, and you got a little something everywhere. And during that time frame, you had little African American communities, or people like to call themselves foundational Black American communities, FBA communities. And there's nothing wrong with that, you know, because you got that to this day. A lot of people who immigrate to the United States, they can go into a barbershop, a salon, a restaurant, a mechanic shop, a furniture shop, and their native language is being spoken in there, and they feel more comfortable and at home. Outside of English, Spanish is the most widely spoken language in the United States of America. Is there anything wrong with that? No, but I've been to spots where, hey, it's a little, because I speak a little Spanish, I can get, I can get along or whatnot. And but I've been to places that's little El Salvador. I've been to places that's been little Mexico, from Texas to Virginia to Maryland. I've been to places that's little Puerto Rico and little Dominican Republic and whatnot. Heck, I've been to spots that's little Ethiopia. You know what I mean? Because folks fit in where they get. I mean, they get in where they fit in or whatnot. Is there anything wrong with that? Absolutely not. So, um, it's like culture is important, and African American culture or foundational Black American culture is just as important. It's not hating on anybody; it's just appreciating who you are and where you come from. That's all it is. I don't have time to hate on anybody. That is the most wasted emotion, in my personal opinion, on the planet, is to constantly hate somebody. And I'm just keeping it real on that one. I got nothing but love for everybody. And if I don't particularly care for your company, then I just don't talk to you. It's a simple thing. I don't realize, I don't understand why people got to make it more difficult than that. But it is what it is. The history is very, very, very interesting in my personal opinion. And, because the thing is about the Chicago businessman George and Pullman, it was just a few years after the Civil War that he started hiring. And bear in mind, this was a white man that helped create a lot of the Black middle class. By hiring thousands of African American men, including many former slaves, to serve white passengers traveling across the country. That's the thing that to take into consideration. George Pullman, you know, and this actually, this story was actually updated October of last year, 2021 and whatnot. Obviously, they were underpaid and overworked and endured constant racism on the job. Pullman porters would eventually help to fuel the great African American migration, shape the new Black class, and launch civil rights movements and whatnot. That's the thing that people don't realize. Like it's a big thing, very big thing. And in 1859, as railroads were expanding their reach across America, Pullman convinced the Chicago, Alton, and St. Louis Railroad to let him convert the two old passenger cars into new and improved sleepers. These more comfortable, luxurious sleeping cars were an instant hit, affording wealthier passengers the amenities they were accustomed to at home and allowing middle class travelers to enjoy a taste of good life. The first Pullman porter began working aboard the sleeper cars around 1867. So this goes back to the 1860s. And I'm just reading this article now. This is very interesting, to the 1860s, and it quickly became a fixture of the company's sought after traveling experience. Just as all of these specially trained conductors were white, pullman Pullman recruited only Black men, many of them from the former slave states in the South, to work as porters. Because the thing you got to remember, like the reason why you have such a big African American population in northern states and in the Midwest and whatnot on the West Coast, is because of starting with the porter jobs, and then with the Great Migration intensifying with the factory jobs and whatnot. Your Detroits, your St. Louis's, your Chicago's, your Cleveland's, your Cincinnati's. Your Minneapolis, Minnesota, Los Angeles, Las Vegas, Seattle, Portland, this is Denver, Colorado. I mean, it's interesting. And then of course, with you have such a huge influx during WW1 and WW2 of African Americans in the military, and then obviously that's intensified since then. Then of course, places where there's a multitude of military communities, you have a lot of African Americans living in those specific areas. But the Pullman Porters was the start of all this, and that's what makes it more interesting, in my personal opinion. All right, but anyways, the job, obviously, the Pullman's jobs were to lug baggage, shine shoes, set up and clean the sleeping berths, and serve passengers and whatnot. And George Pullman was open about his reasons for hiring Negro porters. He said, and I quote, "The reason that former slaves were known best to have how to cater to the customers' every whim, and they would work long hours for cheap wages. He also thought that Black porters, especially those with darker skin, would be more invisible to his white upper and middle class passengers, making it easier for them to feel comfortable during the journey. He was looking for people who had been trained to be the perfect servant." Um, and it's interesting. He was looking for the people to become the perfect servant. He knew that they would come cheap, and he paid them next to nothing. And he knew there was never a question off the train that you would be embarrassed by running into one of these Pullman porters. But despite the undeniable racism behind Pullman's employment practices, he ended up giving advances to people who desperately needed them. In the early 1900s, a time when many other businesses wouldn't hire African Americans, the Pullman Company became the largest single employer of black men in the country. So that's something to really take into consideration. Now, I don't need to go into any more detail than that, but because the thing is, it's like this company, like I said, love him or hate him, this George Pullman was single-handedly a part of helping um, black families get into the middle class during the early 1900s and whatnot. For better or for worse, what I'm saying is this is very interesting, and then the fact that they were around so many rich passengers, a lot of them got a lot of game, and a lot of them were able to you know, enrich themselves because they were able to invest their money into the stock market. And a lot of them that put their dollars together were able to buy real estate. And a lot of them that put their money together was able to purchase businesses and things of that nature, especially those that afterwards they would join the military and, make their army wages and do what they have to do there and come home, and whatever benefits that was available to them, they were able to open up businesses and own real estate and take care of their families and have more sense of community. So I'm gonna leave it at that, family. Hopefully, you guys do the great 3 free things: like, share, and subscribe. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed this. I mean, I think it's a great thing. I'm gonna check the show out tomorrow. So check out the Porter on BET Plus or BET if you have regular cable. Most people have, whatever. And I'm sure it's gonna be on other platforms. But check out the Porter. Um, I'm looking forward to it, and I know that stuff like this needs to be talked about more. You can't know where you're going if you don't know where you're coming from. Also, remember, if you are a stock market investor, crypto investor, if you are a individual retirement account person, don't forget to sign up with Stash, WEBULL, Acorns, Crypto.com, Coinbase. Want to be able to make money move, you got to invest in the Not giving out any financial advice, but all I'm saying is greatly appreciate it. Thank you to my new subscribers that are here. Thank you to the people that have been supporting me since day one. And you gotta be appreciative of just being alive, man. That's all I can say. So to the Pullman Porters, nothing but love and respect to you all. Nothing but love and respect to your families. Thank you for the sacrifices that you made to ensure that African Americans could have a shot at more education and getting a shot into the middle class and getting a shot at performing in this wonderful thing they call capitalism in the United States of America. That's all I can say on that one, man. I'm out.
Mike, now.